Welcome back to another how-to video. Today's video is going to be brought to you by Warn Industries. We're going to be installing this VR Evo Series 12,000 pound synthetic line winch. So we're also going to be putting on a Factor 55 fair lead. We're also going to be using a Factor 55 Ultra hook. We're going to be showing you guys how to install that. So if you go back to the other video where we installed this Barnes four-wheel drive bumper, we're basically going to be reversing the process, removing this bumper and installing this winch. All right, so on the back side of your bumper, we have 4 nuts with washers. So you want to loosen those up. In our case, it's a 3/4 inch nut. So we've got a 3/4 inch wrench that we're able to reach in and get it out. Yours might be different, so you might have to use a different wrench, but on this one, we're going to take the 4 nuts off, and grab somebody to help you and lift it off. Just set it down. All right, so behind our bumper, we actually have a winch plate. So on this Barnes four-wheel drive bumper, they've integrated the winch mount into the bumper system. So this actually ties to brackets that tie to the frame. If you go back to our how-to video on installing the bumper, you'll see how we connected this to the frame rails, but you want to make sure that your winch mount bracket is secured to the frame properly so that when you go to winch on this, you don't break anything. All right, now that we've got the bumper off, let's get this Evo Series 12,000 pound winch unboxed, show you guys what comes in it. So you've got some instructions, you've got your winch controller. Now this is wired and wireless. So that's the cool thing about the Warn Industries winches, is you can take and use this as a wireless controller, or you can hook a cable to it. So with your Evo Series winch, it comes with a new hook, but we're actually not going to use this hook because we're going to be using our Factor 55 hook. It comes with your installation bolts. We're going to need those. It comes with a set of fair lead bolts. So these bolts are for your fair lead, these bolts are for your winch. They're Warn Industries fair lead. Now normally we would use this, but because Warn Industries owns Factor 55, they've sent us their Factor 55 fair lead that we are going to use on this install. And that brings us to our Evo Series VR12 synthetic line winch. All right, so Factor 55 sent us their Ultra hook. We're going to show you this. We got it in yellow because why wouldn't you want yellow for the bus? So look at that thing. It's awesome. Not only did they send us their Ultra hook, they sent us their rope guard as well. Now this goes on top of the hook and it actually protects your rope. So it's going to bolt on just like that. Now to finish off our install, we're going to be using a Factor 55 fair lead on the front of our winch bumper. As soon as we get our winch on the ground, we want to snip all of our zip ties, make sure that we've got all of our cables, so the ground wire is actually tucked in the bottom of the winch remote control box. So there we go, we've got our ground, we've got our positive. These are going to run direct to the battery. These are going to be what powers up this winch. Now we're going to install our ground wire and get this winch into position and start bolting it down. We went ahead and we grabbed our hardware kit that came with the winch. Now the cool thing about Warn Industries is they actually send you 2 different lengths of bolts. Now they've thought everything out of this. So they send you 4 regular length bolts and they send you 4 extra long bolts. We're going to be using these standard length bolts to mount our winch to this winch plate. So you'll notice there's 4 square headed nuts. You're going to need to use these. These slide into the bottom of the winch. You're going to use a washer and a lock washer along with your bolt, and we're going to get this thing tightened down. So verify. Before we go ahead and bolt this down, you want to verify that your ground strap is tight. So we went ahead and we tightened that up. We're going to it's really simple. You just put it into place. Now, remember these square nuts that I told you guys about. These need to be put into place right now. So we're going to slide them in. They go right inside these little openings. And we have 2 on the back side. What you can do is you can just pivot your winch forward, slide those in, and there you have it. You do not want to use a normal hexagon nut. You want to use the square nuts provided from Warn. One thing I'd like to point out is the ease of application. Now Barnes four-wheel drive, they made this bumper design to where you can actually pull the face of the bumper off and you still have your winch mount plate installed. So you're getting the bulk of the bumper out of the way. This is super simple, and you can get right in and you can get your winch mounted with no issues. One thing you want to do before you get this mounted is look for a routing location for your wires. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this transmission cooler line, and I'm going to go back up behind, and I'm going to feed my lines up to my battery that sits up top. So if these are not long enough, you may have to make new cables, but in most applications, the wiring that comes with your winch is going to be enough wire to hook all the way direct to your battery. And just like that, you've got your new VR Evo 12S mounted and ready to wire. So what you want to do is find your routing location and just use a piece of wire to fish it through. And gently feed your wiring. There we have it. So now we can grab on and get these hooked up to direct to power and direct to ground. And then we'll see if our winch works. So what I'm doing is I'm coiling up the excess wire because on this bus we actually don't have the battery up here. It's ran in the back. So we've got a little bit of extra wiring here. We're going to go to our negative and our positive leads up here in the engine compartment, and we're going to hook up our power and ground. Alright, so now that we've got this wired in, let's test it out. Alright, so it looks like it's working exactly how it should. We were able to wire it in to the starter solenoid and to a ground post that takes the negative all the way back to the battery in the center, lower part of the bus. So on these buses, they don't put the batteries up front. So in your vehicle, there will be a battery somewhere underneath the hood unless you've relocated it in one of your buggies or a rig that you built yourself. In that situation, you just need to figure out how to get the wires back to your battery. Your synthetic winch line is lighter than your cable. This, in some instances, could save you 100 to 150 pounds up front. And by eliminating that weight, that's less weight on your front end, and it's easy handling. Look at, I mean, you can freewheel this, you can pull it right out, you don't get any metal splinters. This will actually float in water, where your cable, not gonna float. So synthetic winch line floats. And the biggest reason we went with our synthetic line over cable is no rust. So this is going to see a lot of moisture where it's out in the front of the vehicle. This synthetic line, obviously it can't rust. With your cable, it's going to rust, it's going to be dirty. You know, you could have splinters. When you try to pull it out, you can cut your hand. There's a lot of different things. And in this situation, we decided that synthetic winch line is going to be better for us. All right, so let's go ahead and get this install completed. What we need to do next is we need to get our front bumper put back on. So we're going to grab the bumper, get it bolted on, and then we're going to move on to the Fairlead installation and our Factor 55 Ultra hook. All right, so one thing that we want to do is we want to install our Fairlead before we put the bumper on the vehicle. It's just going to be easier, then we don't have to try to get behind because now we have a winch behind the bumper and you can't really access it from the bottom. So this is just going to make it easier. So we're installing our Factor 55 Fairlead with our Warn Industries provided bolts and hardware. All right, and then we're going to use the provided lock washers and nuts on the back side, and we'll get these tightened up. All right, we're ready to get this bumper put on.
You want to let some of that winch out, or can we reach in?
We'll reach in.
Your way?
All right, Wayne. Now that we have our washers and nuts on, we're going to start the bottom ones, get them snugged up, and adjust our body line, and then tighten them up fully.
Come up with it.
All right, so we've got that adjusted side to side. We'll go ahead and tighten up the rest of the nuts, and this install will just about be done, but the bumper itself will be installed. All right, so now that we've got our bumper installed, we've got it all tightened up, we're ready to put our Factor 55 Ultra hook on. Now this is going to require that you get a pair of snap ring pliers. There's a little snap ring down inside that holds this pin. You pull the snap ring, you slide the rod, install your hook, put your rod back in it, and now we're going to install our snap ring back inside here. Now that we've got this installed, you want to pull out some of your synthetic winch line. Give yourself enough that you can get down to the ground. We're going to grab a block of wood, and I'm going to show you how to put your rope guard from Factor 55 onto your Ultra hook. You want to use the provided rivets that come with your rope guard from Factor 55. We're going to be installing these into the hole. I'll show you a close-up. These go down inside the hole. You've got to drive them in, and then you're going to drive the center pin, and what that does is that expands the bottom, and that keeps that rope guard on to where it can never fall off. And we're going to show you exactly how to do that. You want to make sure that your rivets are seated before you start to pound them with the hammer. Now that one is not seated. We want to make sure that it's seated before we drive that center pin in. So now that they're seated, I'm going to grab a punch, and we're going to put it on our wood and drive the center pins of our rivets into place. A couple things I want to point out about the Factor 55 Ultra hook is it's got this hook lockout. This pin goes right here, and you actually take it and you lock out your hook. So when you hook it up, you can put your lockout pin. Doesn't allow this to come forward, and you can safely winch out whatever you're pulling. Now if you don't want to put it in the hook, you can use your closed system shackle mount, which is right here in this hole. So there's a few different options with this Ultra hook. It's kind of cool, and the yellow matches the bus, so you can even get the same color as your vehicle. So what we want to do now is we're going to winch this in and set the hook, and that'll conclude the installation of our Warn Industries VR12S and our Ultra hook from Factor 55. I'm going to go ahead and hook up my winch cable, which you've got to stick your hand through this hole, hook it up, and then we'll winch this line in and we'll have this all wrapped up. So that concludes the installation of our Warn Industries winch and our Factor 55 accessories. So I'd like to thank onX Offroad for providing this video for you guys, utilizing their Elite Partnership Program, highlighting Warn Industries and Factor 55. If you guys are not already Elite members, make sure you head over to onX Offroad, get yourself an Elite membership, and you can save yourself a lot of money on a winch like this or on an Ultra hook like this. So, as always, thank you, and if you enjoyed this how-to video, make sure you go and check out the rest of the how-to series on onX Offroad's YouTube channel.